So, with Spider-Man Far From Home now out in cinemas, it is time for every Spider-Man movie ranked. Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Ranked, where I will be taking a look at all the Spider-Man movies and ranking them from my least favourite to most favourite. I just also want to say Venom is not in this list because I don't really view that as a Spider-Man movie, it's kind of its own thing. So basically we're starting off from Tobey Maguire's debut in 2002 all the way through to present day with Spider-Man Far From Home. So, let's get ranking. That sounds bad. Spider-Man does whatever a spider can. Kicking off this list in last place and being awarded the wooden spoon for my least favourite Spider-Man movie is The Amazing Spiderman. Now, it's not that I don't think Andrew Garfield's first outing as Spider-Man was inherently terrible, it's just that when I was rewatching it in prep for this video, it's really boring. And one of the things that it suffers from most is that there isn't really much of a style. Throughout the film, it's very flat. There's no sort of excitement to anything. Even when Spider-Man is swinging around New York, you feel kind of bland when watching it. I do like Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man. Not so keen on him as Peter Parker, especially I wasn't that sold on the romance between him and Emma Stone as Gwen Stacy, which is kind of weird considering that in real life they were a couple, but when he's being awkward and you get these really, really uncomfortable scenes of him just stuttering and fumbling over his words, it came across less like him sort of struggling to confess his true feelings to her, and more like Andrew Garfield just forgetting his lines.
I wish I could just... It's hard to say.
I think the film also doesn't do a great job with its villain. Kurt Connors as the Lizard, admittedly, I'm not overly fond of that character as a villain anyway. I think he's just kind of your generic monster type villain. I've never found when reading any Spider-Man comics that the Lizard is one of my favourite of Spider-Man's entire villain gallery. He's just kind of a bit boring to me. And I think Reese fans, he does an alright job, but that character is purely in this film to try and set up this mystery involving Peter's parents, and it kind of all gets a bit fumbled. This Spider-Man movie, for me, and no Spider-Man movie should ever do this, just comes across as very dull. Spider-Man is one of the most exciting comic book characters ever created, and yet this film basically managed to make him incredibly stale. Also, the suit looks terrible. Spider-Man does whatever a spider can. Following on in number 7 is The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Yes, has to be said, I'm not overly fond of the Andrew Garfield, Mark Webb Spider-Man movies. And like I said, I don't think Andrew Garfield was the problem. I think that he makes for a very likable Spider-Man and a kind of so-so Peter Parker. But the problem that you get with Amazing Spider-Man 2 is that somewhere deep down in there, I reckon, is a good movie. I reckon that if you kind of pick away that whole Rhino side story, because that is just terrible to watch. You kind of remove Harry Osborn and maybe make him tie on at the very, very end, as if to then set up the Sinister Six and his involvement in the Spider universe, and make it solely about Electro. I think you've got a fairly decent Spider-Man movie on your hands. The problem is that Sony didn't learn from their mistakes with Spider-Man 3 in trying to cram so many villains into one film, that they kind of do the same thing again. And because they're basically trying to jump on the bandwagon that Marvel, the MCU, were doing so well in creating a cinematic universe, Sony did the one thing that so many other companies have tried to do, and that is build your universe in one film. It can't be done. They're building up to so many things that unfortunately sequences such as the romance between Peter Parker and Gwen Stacy, which I think was so much better in this film. It felt a lot more natural. didn't get the time to shine because they're too worried about how we're going to tease the Sinister Six, and Harry Osborn has got to become Green Goblin in an instant. Ultimately, the reason why I prefer the Amazing Spider-Man 2 over the Amazing Spider-Man is that it just has a lot more energy, a lot more excitement, and things are better executed. It's just that they're trying to cram so much in. Spider-Man, Spider-Man, does whatever a spider can. In at number 6 is the finale to Sam Raimi's trilogy, Spider-Man 3. Now, I'll be honest, I don't hate this movie as much as some people do. Yes, it certainly has major missteps. For example, that whole emo Peter Parker sequence where he's dancing along the streets and then he's singing in the jazz bar.
Now dig on this.
Yeah, I seriously could have done without that. As a whole, though, again, it has way too many villains that they're trying to cram in. And the thing is, I don't think it's a directing issue. Sam Raimi does an excellent job directing this film. There's amazing visuals. That whole sequence with Sandman where he's kind of born and he's trying to grab his locket is heartbreaking to watch. And I think Thomas Hayden Church did a great job. But once again, you've just got too many things going on that it begins to cloud the overall story. You've got Harry Osborn, who now is discovered that Peter is Spider-Man and he wants revenge for killing his father. So he inherits, he becomes the new Goblin, and you have, admittedly, quite a cool opening sequence with Harry fighting Peter, but at the same time he loses his memory and that entire sub-story is just forgotten about until it picks up about 20 minutes before the end. Then you've got the inclusion of Venom, which lasts for about, again, 10 minutes, and you're kind of questioning why, what was the point, when you've got such an important character to the Spider-Man lore as Venom, and you're just going to kind of let it be and not really explore it all that much. It's kind of messy, but at the same time, there are elements that I really do like. I think, for once, I actually kind of enjoyed the Spider-Man Mary Jane relationship within these films. I'm not too fond of the whole Tobey Maguire Kirsten Dunst. It's kind of ham-fisted, kind of cheesy, but I kind of enjoyed it in Spider-Man 3. The action scenes are incredibly exciting to watch. The visuals are great. It's just, again, it just kind of dropped the pot as to what it was trying to achieve. Spider-Man, Spider-Man, does whatever a spider can. And now we start to move on to the good, because at number 5 is Spider-Man, the original one, directed by Sam Raimi all the way in 2002. And look, do some scenes feel kind of dated? Are the visuals as impressive as they are nowadays? No, they're not. Parts of it and elements of it, you kind of think, wow, that was very 2000s. But at the same time, it's a thoroughly enjoyable film. To think that this was the first on-screen debut of Spider-Man, and how many things it did right in regards to his origin story, the Uncle Ben story, his sort of emergence as Spider-Man and him battling the Green Goblin, so much of it was done so well that you kind of overlook the cheesy script, the ham-fisted dialogue, the weird romance that I just didn't buy into. The fact that the characters that meant to be in high school look about 30. They're overlooked for really, really impressive direction, giving us a superhero film that at that time we never thought we'd get the chance to see, as well as a terrific score from Danny Elfman, one that I don't think has yet to be replicated, even though Michael Giacchino's work is fantastic, and overall, a very fun, exciting comic book outing. Spider-Man, Spider-Man, does whatever a spider can. At number 4 is Tom Holland's first film as Spider-Man, not counting Civil War or any of the Avengers, Infinity Wars, Endgames, is Spider-Man Homecoming. I really enjoy this movie so much. It is such an easy watch from start to finish. I love Tom Holland as Spider-Man and Peter Parker. He's that perfect blend of high school, awkward kid, but yet he's a badass superhero at the same time. And the way that John Watts and his screenwriters are able to blend and weave the story, so it's not just a Spider-Man movie or just a Peter Parker movie, it feels like both at the same time. It's so impressive, it's so funny, it has that Marvel trademark humor, but as well you've got comedic talents such as Martin Starr, who in my opinion gives my favorite line of that film.
Couldn't bear to lose a student on a school trip. Not again.
But also as well, Spider-Man Homecoming gave arguably what I consider to be my favourite on-screen portrayal of any Spider-Man villain to date, and that is Michael Keaton as the Vulture. Not only does he have that impressive twist where it's revealed that he is Liz's father, and yet you kind of buy his motivations as to why he's a villain, but I do think we're underlooking the fact that, yes, a lot of villains have this global devastation, end of the world scenario. This guy, just to protect his family, is willing to kill a child. He admittedly and openly says that. He is willing to murder a child. That's a up villain if I've ever seen one.
Spider-Man, Spider-Man, does whatever a spider can.
In at number 3 is what probably many consider to be one of the best Spider-Man movies up until like the past few years. Everyone had this one at the top. It was the Spider-Man movie to beat. I am, of course, talking about Spider-Man 2. This completely raised the stakes for not just Spider-Man movies, but for superhero movies in general. It took the characters that we were introduced to in Sam Raimi's original film and really expanded upon them. That whole dilemma of Peter juggling his Peter Parker life as well as Spider-Man life, and which could he be? Maybe he can't be both. Maybe he has to just pick one. And we also get more in depth to Mary Jane's character, and this was when it started. The romance didn't start to annoy me as much, and I started to buy into it a little bit more. You get a cool angle with Harry Osborn where he's kind of got this vendetta against Spider-Man, but obviously at this point he doesn't yet know that it's Peter Parker. And you get some of the best action I think I've seen in any Spider-Man film, and it still holds up. The entire sequence on the train with Spider-Man versus Doc Ock is incredible. It's funny, it's energetic, it's action-packed. Spider-Man 2, it ticks the majority of the boxes that you want from a Spider-Man movie.
Spider-Man, Spider-Man, does whatever a spider can.
And just missing out on the top spot in at number 2 is the most recent Spider-Man movie, Spider-Man Far From Home. I absolutely love Spider-Man Far From Home. I've seen it twice now, and it got better the second time round. It is, from start to finish, pun intended, amazing. The way in which Tom Holland has made this character his own, and you really, really fall for this romance that he's trying to initiate between himself and Zendaya as MJ. That, for me, still continues to be my favourite aspect of the movie. Now, spoilers for Far From Home, if you haven't seen it yet, I'll put a timestamp here so you can skip along. But Mysterio is such a cool character, the way he's developed, because admittedly you think that he's this sort of superhero, that he's gonna be a new mentor for Spider-Man, because he kind of looks a bit like Tony Stark, but then you get that, unfortunately it's kind of a heavy exposition drop in that bar, where it's revealed that Mysterio is a villain all along, and he's been sort of playing this superhero with the motion capture suit. And you get that fantastic sequence. I was talking about it in my review. An amazing sequence in which Mysterio is projecting all these illusions onto Spider-Man in this empty warehouse. And it just gets so trippy. It gets very Doctor Strange-esque, but it is everything that I wanted for Mysterio. I was so desperately craving a sequence like this once I heard that Mysterio was in the film. Jake Gyllenhaal does an amazing job. The after-credit scenes are fantastic, teasing of how this world now is going to move on now that Peter Parker's identity has been revealed, and also the fact that there are Skrulls possibly living among us that we don't even know about. It is such an exciting Spider-Man movie, and it does such a great job within its realm of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It is such a fantastic watch.
Spider-Man, Spider-Man, does whatever a spider can.
And so, in at number 1, my favourite Spider-Man movie, it should come as no surprise if you know me, it's Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. My mind was figuratively and literally blown away when I saw this for the first time. Not only is the animation itself just sheer and utterly beautiful, the way in which it has that comic book like texture over the top, and the way that it includes comic book stylings with big sort of graphics appearing behind characters, or the little boxes that are describing their inner thoughts.
Play dumb. Who's Morales? Not that dumb.
But the story itself, it's everything that when I've read Spider-Man comics, it's everything I've wanted to see translate on screen. All the different spider people involved. We're getting Miles Morales, a fantastic character, finally getting his time to shine. You're getting an older, more experienced, kind of hardened Peter Parker as his mentor. You're getting a whole bunch of Spider-Man villains. Kingpin, Green Goblin kind of shows up there for a little bit. Not to mention that it is so funny. It is one of the funniest films I saw in the whole of 2018. And what's more is that I can put it on. Even if I have literally just finished watching that film, I can put it on again and I will still laugh at the majority of the jokes. Spider-Ham, Spider-Man Noir, Spider-Gwen. I love this movie. The action, the humour, the energy, the vibrancy to the whole thing. It is such an engrossing watch, and it's a true testament that this is how Spider-Man should be represented on screen. I absolutely love Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and that is why it is my #1 Spider-Man movie ever. Thanks for watching this episode of Ranked. Let me know what order you would put these films in the comments below. If you have enjoyed this video, please make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. All the links to my social media accounts are in the description below. Many thanks for watching, guys, and I shall see you in the next video.